Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 608. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge. I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of the Sultan of Strategery, the indestructible, bridge-defying, proudly moved from Gotham City to Otisburg, and is still the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to be talking Batman 89 and Superman number 78. We are supported, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what's going on over at DCBService.com?
Two words you and I love, box set and 50% off. We've got a Batman box set. It's got Long Halloween, Batman Ego and Other Tales, Batman Year One, 50% off, only $31.50. But we also have the Fables 20th Anniversary box set. This has the full Fables saga, 1 to 150, Fables Last Castle, Fables 1001 Nights of Snowfall, Fables Werewolves of Heartland, Jack of Fables 33 to 35, and the Literals 1 to 3. All of that together, 50% off, only $120. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, I've referenced this before, the Coming Soon section. And I love this because you can log in and create your own wish list. And this is good if there's upcoming collected editions that you want to start highlighting. You can't buy them all at once, but you want to grab some of them. You don't want to miss any of them. Because, there's some great ones coming up. There's a Batman, the Bronze Age Omnibus hardcover, Brave and the Bold. Volume 3. It's the third volume of this. And I've got the first two volumes of it. I don't have pre-ordered yet Volume 3. I loved Brave and the Bold. It's one of those series as a kid that got me to get to know such a wealth of DC heroes. So I'm jumping on this. I want to have that series. So I'm going to grab that. They have Batman in the 50s trade paperback that's coming out. And these are all September releases. Batman Fortnite, 0 Point, the hardcover collection's coming out. Joker Harley Criminal Sanity is a hardcover. It's a gorgeous series. That's one that if you miss this, the way to read this is totally in hardcover. Next, Batman Second Son is coming out this week in hardcover. That's the John Ridley, digital release series that had been coming out. It's a great series. Right now, I Am Batman takes place after this. So it's a great prelude to all of that, and the hardcover format's great to read it at. And on a side note, outside of DC, I'm a big fan of video games. Dragon Age was one of the game series I love. The hardcover's coming out of Dragon Age Dark Fortress, which I didn't read yet, and I would love to read it as a collected edition. So I love being able to browse through it, find things that interest me, highlight them in my wish list, and gradually buy them as my funds allow me to be able to afford them. So it's a cool way to set yourself up with a game plan. Because it's hard to keep up with some of this, both on releases but also financially. And this allows you to kind of gradually ease your way through some of the things that you want to get. So I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segula, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets DC Podcast. Raging Bullets is a spoiler show. We go in depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot other comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
I almost was going to say let's talk some movies, but instead let's talk some comics inspired by the movies.
Like a human helicopter, the Flash rotates his body, rising faster, faster!
Jim, before we jump into our conversation about Batman 89, I want to talk real quick about a book that I've been digging. I got caught up on Suicide Squad, and we talked about it last when they were doing the Titans Academy crossover, but now they've jumped onto this storyline involving the crime syndicate, where they're on Earth 3, and it's all about Waller trying to recruit talent for the Suicide Squad. Are you caught up on this book?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, this, and the reason why I'm referencing it is, as of when we're doing this recording, tomorrow the annual is going to come out, which is going to tell us more about Superboy and his relationship with this team and how he wound up being on it. I'm really enjoying this title a great deal. I think I was into it before the movie, then the movie hit, and I really liked that, so now I'm even more into it. The whole Suicide Squad thing has really been outstanding. It's a terrific book. I just wanted to shout it out for people out there. If you're missing this, there is a really great storyline going on right now involving I like the Crime Syndicate storyline a lot. Them versus the bad guys versus the bad guys. With Waller kind of looking at this world and seeing this as a world that maybe they kind of really like me to save them. It was a cool sort of thing. So I wanted to shout out the series. Our first discussion this episode is going to be Batman 89, Chapter 1, Shadows. Sam Hamm is the writer, Joe Quijones on art and cover, Leonardo Ito is colors, Clayton Cowles on letters, Jerry Ordway and Steve Oliff on the variant cover, Joe Quijones on the design variant cover, Andrew Marino and Andy Kohori are the editors. Batman created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger, and apologies for any name butchery. This was something I was eagerly anticipating for a lot of reasons. 89, when the Batman 89 movie hit, that was our senior year in high school. This was a phenomenon. And I, as a Batman fan, to feel like I heard what it was like when the Batman 66 show was at its height and how people were very into it. This was something, Batman 89 hit and everybody was into it. There was clothing. People were actually, at that time, mohawks and things like that were sort of popular, and people were actually cutting bat symbols, getting their hair cut with bat symbols in their hair. Yeah. Wasn't it Jorge Paez, I think was the boxer that did it?
Yeah.
And it was really cool. But there was a lot of Batman merch, which was new and unique. And the film in 89 was a darker tone for a Batman movie. Michael Keaton sold it. And I remember seeing this in the theater multiple times because it was before the era where it was really easy to get a film with the speed that we get them now. We're very used to it's in the theater and then a few months later we're going to be able to buy it. Back then it wasn't the case. It was released and re-released, and I saw this multiple times. We may have, I was trying to remember, is there any chance you and I saw it together? Because I saw it 87 billion times. I don't know if we did or not, but I wouldn't be shocked.
I'll be honest, I think we did. I think one of the times, because I saw it multiple times as well, and I think one of the times we saw it was the full group. We went out as the full crew, and I know we did that for a bunch of movies. So I'm pretty sure you and I, at one point in time, were in the theater with our whole crew watching this.
I know my first viewing of it was a crazy late night showing at Lake Theater. I was working at Diamonds at the time, and I ended up whatever the first possible showing you could go to, that was where I was at, and I believe it was a late night showing that you could see it. My initial reaction to it was I was blown away. Years later, we've seen a lot of Batman film, and obviously they've evolved and taken it to the next level where the movies that we started getting were even closer to the comics than what we could ever imagine. This one I was eagerly anticipating, especially when Sam Hamm was going to be writing it, because you knew that it was going to be set in that world with the same kind of script writing and tone that you got in the actual film itself. I was excited for this. I really enjoyed the first issue of this one out of the gate. It was nice to revisit this Batman world. Did you like this? What was your take on this?
Oh, I 100% liked it. This was, again, like you, I went back to this. It was cool to go back to this world, cool to go back to our senior year in high school. And just, there was a lot of nostalgia when I was reading this, just because, again, it is a solid story. So I don't want people thinking I'm just enjoying this because of nostalgia, but this is a solid Bat story. But I like the fact that they went back to, Billy D. Williams as Harvey Dent, and, just some of the art choices where you can clearly see based on the different actors, sometimes they deviated a little bit from that, but just the continuing story of that universe, the continuing adventures of that universe was kind of neat, for me to see that, because I don't know, we did get another movie, we got the Bat, the Cat, and the Penguin with this crew, but as movies went on further down the line from the initial one, it started getting more and more cheesy. You know, and for me, this is holding on to that initial vibe, that initial feeling, what the movie was. So I'm happy with this.
Yeah, I agree. I think Batman Returns managed to hold on to a lot of the tone of the first movie, but I felt like this comic is definitely a lot more attached to the first movie than the second. Mm-hmm. Just in the sense that the tone, I think it's kind of staying very. It's weird to say this. It's staying simple in its focus, but I think it's a strength of it as well. In the sense that we don't have like 87 things going on. We're really focused on the story right now of Harvey Dent and Barbara, and this idea that Batman's operating in the city, and yeah, he's saving millions of dollars, but he's wreaking just as much havoc. And I always loved this exploration of vigilantes, where you sit there and go, well, okay, I'm on the side of the hero, and I believe in what the hero's doing. But I can see the argument where you're sitting here saying, but look how much the cost is going to the city because of this. So yeah, he saved these armored trucks, but somebody died, somebody got seriously injured, millions of dollars were lost in this. You can see why Jim Gordon's being brought into question because of this. It's an interesting sort of exploration that I feel fits this world a great deal. So this story is a nice journey back. I loved the Batman 66 comic when they did it. I liked the Smallville comics when they did it. And they did some great spin-offs of things like Arrow, for example, and the Flash TV series that really are well written, understand the world that they're representing in comics. This, wow, does this feel like a Burton flick watching it through. I love that it's 6 issues because I feel like it's going to be the right length of story to feel like another film in this series. And if it does well, I hope we, similarly to the Batman 66 I was referencing, we get more of these because I'm really enjoying, I'm recognizing how much I really have a nostalgia. And you nailed it on that. A nostalgia for this world, this time. It's fun to journey back to high school. And what if they were able to do a third movie?
One of the things I do like about this book is this whole connection with the problem the police department is starting to have with Gordon, starting to have with the vigilantes, and then just the general population.
Yeah,
is what they're doing. I think that's one of the. I could sit here and on just because the book, like, yay, but the fact that this has a solid story going on, not just a solid Batman story, but they're actually making Gotham City a character. And as we've always said, Gotham City needs to be a character. I love how, like, right from jump, we have this news article where they're talking about how Batman, once again, is a popular choice for costume. And the guy's like, all due respect, man, we wear these every night. There are people going around in the Bat costume who are doing, it's basically, citizens stepping up.
He called it a uniform. Jim, he called it a uniform. I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off. I mean, I'm actually more adding on to what you're saying. He called it a uniform. So please carry on. I'm sorry, because it's. I think you're making a great point. But I'm like, whoa, yes, uniform.
Yeah. These guys are serious about this, and they're doing the vigilante thing, but without the flash of vigilante. They're standing in the businesses. Anybody who's going to rob that business, you've got this guy to deal with. Now, he's not probably that highly trained, but still, a lot of times with criminals, they look for the easiest path. They'll look for the open car door. They'll look for the business that doesn't have cameras in it or doesn't have people in it. You got some person, standing 24/7 in a Bat costume, standing in front of that business. That's going to just cause hassle. Let me go down the street to the other one. So I like seeing this kind of stuff going on in there. I think that, again, it's showing Gotham City itself is dealing with this vigilante who's been around for a little bit now.
I like the Joker costume too. Sir, do you feel like your costume glorifies a dangerous criminal? Who said that? The gentleman in the Batman suit? Oh. It's just...
Again, little funny things like that doesn't take away from the book. And I think that, again, is another good balance of needed comedic moments versus storytelling.
Well, needed comedic moments, though, that are framed in a very serious... Because what she's talking about in her awkwardness is genuine. So, yes, comedic moments, but it's not like slapstick for the sake of slapstick, which, it's funny you referenced the difference as the movies went on. I liked the later movies. I'm not going to go back in time and pretend I didn't, but they got hokier as they went along, right? I thought the first two were a lot more representative of what we're seeing here right now. But this actually, I would make a strong argument that I in some ways, I wish this had been either the third movie or the direct sequel to the first, because I like this. There's comedic moments, but it is a more serious exploration of the world created in Batman 89. And the thing that I think Tim Burton really nailed, besides the great casting of characters, was exactly what you were referencing. Gotham's a character. And Tim Burton, with his designs, and that crew that he works with that makes those amazing sets, Gotham City was absolutely 110% a character in that movie.
Yes. Oh, definitely. It's funny. You know what I just noticed? Mm-hmm. I'm kicking myself for missing this, but we've got the great scene where Harvey's proposing and all that stuff, and you got the two-headed coin. And I was so focused on that the panel directly next to it, where the clown is doing the countdown, which leads to the big explosion and all that, the background of those, you've got the guys dressed up as the Bat beating up the guys dressed up like the clown.
Yeah.
I missed it. And I'm like kicking myself for missing it. I just noticed it now. But that's the kind of neat stuff going on in this book that even after a couple read-throughs, I'm still catching new stuff. Because I was so focused on the coin. I was so focused on the countdown. I was looking at that. You miss little stuff like that. I'm like, dang, that's awesome.
I appreciate that attention to detail by art, too. Because realistically, if you think about it, you could have left that out. On the surface level. Yeah. But to me, I appreciate artists that put those attention to details in those tiny moments. It takes them longer, but it makes for a rich reread, right? Because I've read this multiple times, and I did not catch that until I want to say my third read through, maybe. Yeah. Because I think it had been my third read. I definitely wasn't the first two, because I remember rereading this again in preparation for this episode, and because I wanted a fresh reread of it. And there was a lot that I noticed in the artwork. That was something that you don't have to do, but man, does that make for... To me, that's the difference between a good comic and a great comic. It's when you have those extra little tiny details that are in there.
Oh, definitely. And again, I like the plan. This is a great plan.
Yep.
Where you set off the massive... you got the explosion, but then you also have massive looting and rioting going on. It's distraction. Pull the police in multiple directions. Go after your true target. I loved this plan. And again, it's this Joker crew where they can't be bringing back the Joker. These got to be other guys. But on the other hand, I'm like, you never know. Even though we did see a dead Joker body in the movie, are they going to bring him back? And that's the thing that always makes me wonder.
I think we're getting a Two-Face story.
Well, I definitely think we're getting a Two-Face story. But, I do wonder, could that be like the end of this issue? Okay, this series is about Two-Face story probably. At the final scene of this book is a glimpse that the Joker's still alive. But you think back to the movie, there's no way he could have survived that. Right?
So do you think it's going to be a different Joker?
I don't know. That's one of the things. Like, there's so much going on. They could do some really cool stuff with this. So that's like to your point at the beginning of when we first started talking about this. We hope this does well, so they do more. And there's so many different things they could do with this universe.
One of the things I really like is they seem to be ignoring the later movies. And,
I think so. Yeah.
Especially with Barbara Gordon and what's going on there. It's clearly that they're ignoring, and I'm really good with that. Because I think just focusing on like maybe the Michael Keaton movies are canon for this world and then just going from there, I think is a smart move. I really wanted to see more of this. Again, I liked the other movies. I'm not going to go back in time and pretend I didn't. But I do see why you could sit there and go, you know what, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go right back to that 89 Batman film and really focus on, if we were going to expand out from this, what could we have done? And I think this is embracing that, and I really enjoy it. I love the hand glider moment with they're stealing these They're using this, and they're even questioning whether or not this helicopter trick of theirs is going to work.
Yeah.
Batman's swooping on in. I loved how violent this was, because you really get this idea of the damage. And when I say violent, I'm not talking about necessarily lots of punching and kicking and things like that. I'm talking about explosions and damage to buildings, and you even see like the wink and the nod to the giant penny.
Yep.
Which I thought was really cool. You know, I guess I was kind of assuming that was going to be the eventual like giant penny that would wind up in the Batcave, and I really liked that as well. I was a fan of that Batmobile with the shields. I think the aesthetic of the Tim Burton movie was really, really stunning at the time. I just remember the sound. I almost could hear the soundtrack playing in my head as I was reading this.
Oh, big time. And I'll tell you, and like you, I love this Batmobile. I really do. And even the bits on the costume, how his costume was a little bit bulletproof. And if you think back to the original movie, it wasn't a cloth costume. It was that rubberized Kevlar. And he even took direct shots. And here, he's taking direct bullet shots. And, it hurts, but it's not taking him out. Because his costume was a bit armored, which I kind of like that, and so there's some neat stuff going on with this that they're keeping to this movie, and they should. And it's, again, this is Earth 89, and let's have fun with it. Let's do it. And one of the things that I do like, the fact that again, if you remember, that movie did have some pretty good damages, had pretty good death count, pretty good body count. They were, kind of physical, kind of violent and whatnot. So we're getting that as well tied into this. This is a neat story, and I don't know, man. After issue 1, I'm looking for more.
We're starting to see the chinks in the armor of Harvey Dent, where the way he uses the coin, it's. I don't think he was going to kill the guy there, but I do feel that the point of the coin was to intimidate.
Yes.
And I think that it worked really well. Harvey's relationship with Bruce. And I loved this Alfred. I thought he was the one consistent thread through all of the movies.
Yeah.
And I thought he was a great Alfred. I love seeing him in this again. But the idea that he would go and try to get Bruce Wayne's support, knowing, though, that ultimately Bruce was not going to support him, but it was worth the try. That was something, where Bruce is like, I'm friends with Jim Gordon. Like, listen, I get, what you're trying to do here. Bruce does a really good job of covering that he's Batman. Yes. Because I could see walking out of that and not even thinking that this guy's Batman at all. And I get why Harvey doesn't see that. Bruce does a really good job of separating Bruce from Batman.
Yeah. Well, and just the way they're playing it, they've always played it off well. With the billionaire playboy coming in at noon and he's just now waking up, and it's, again, the reason is because he was up all night. He was up all night as Batman, but everyone thinks he's up all night partying. They do a really good job with it, and that was funny that the one thing that you always wonder, how can people not see that Superman is Clark Kent, and how can you see that figure out that Batman is Bruce Wayne? You've got to have these little playoffs, and just this dialogue, simple dialogue. And I'll tell you, I was hearing the voices, especially everything you said on Alfred. I heard 100% Alfred's voice with this, but even this nice little banter back and forth between, Bruce and Harvey. I was hearing Billy D. Williams and Michael Keaton's voice throughout it, because it's, again, it fits these characters. It fits this movie, but it also fits a good Batman Harvey Dent story.
True. Yeah, very true. Yeah. One of the things that I think was really smart in this was going into some of Harvey Dent's background, going back to the streets where he grew up, growing up with some of his community members that are influences, and how they look to him. Did you lose your way? Did you lose that you're one of us? They're looking up to you as being the man who, got out, but do you still remember your roots and your core and who you are? Harvey coming back and him knowing you're back here for a favor. What is that favor? What are you really here for? And this is the beginning of a smear campaign where he wrote a smear campaign to try and bring down not just Batman, but Jim Gordon in particular. It's funny how Jim Gordon's being targeted even more than Batman. But I think the thinking is, if we can split the relationship between the vigilante and the police, it's going to be a lot easier to handle the vigilante. And it's an interesting ploy, and I get it. I get why he's doing what he's doing. Using the community to kind of build this rift and this divide. It's hard not to argue with, or it's hard not to understand Harvey's logic in this. Even though, as a Batman fan, I'm Team Batman, I can still look at it and go, wow, I get why he feels the way that he does.
And it's the interesting thing with that. You know me very well. I am 100% pro-police.
Sure.
And as you are, too. But it's, with me and my interactions and my dealings with direct personal dealings with police, law enforcement, various agencies, in my head, in the real world, I would not like Batman. I'll tell you flat out, I would not want a vigilante running around, the city, because, you look at all the 1,000 things that could possibly go wrong with this vigilante. Yeah, he brings down the bad guys, but he's not there to testify. He's not there to put them away. His evidence is inadmissible because it wasn't collected through due process. A semi-decent attorney could get most of the Batman stuff thrown out without breaking a sweat because he's not an actual agent, law enforcement. He's not going to be showing up at court to testify, and if he does, he'll be testifying as Batman. Well, you know what? How can you take that testimony as true if we don't know who it actually is? There's so many legal things that would cause problems with the vigilante in the real world. Now, with that being said, I love Batman. I love the vigilante. I love having this in there. But I also do love have these stories when you have these honest people going after vigilantes. Because Harvey Dent is a 100% honest person, but he's looking at it the same way I would look at it in the real world, where this is not law enforcement. If Batman wants to do some good, guess what? Go to the academy, become a cop, or become an agent, with various bureaus. That's how you do good things. That's how you take down the bad guys. You don't do it by, driving around in $1 billion car, beating people up, I love seeing that.
Unless you're the Batman 66 Batman that's been duly deputized.
Exactly. Well, you know what? Batman 66 is awesome. He's deputized. He's legal. If they were to deputize this Batman, I'd be good to go with him then. He would have to follow the criminal, the code of conduct and, just the departmental policies and procedures. So he couldn't just do his own thing. He would need to have due process and whatnot, and probable cause, and etc. But Batman 66 did a really good job with those little stuff and little details like that, where he wasn't a vigilante, but this is a vigilante here. And I like that we are getting a city that 100% doesn't like it. And even like the Gotham police, don't all like the vigilante. That we see that later on when we find out they keep smashing the bat signal.
I love that.
Yeah.
I really loved that because I think it fits so much the tone of the 89 film. And it is funny to contrast it when you look at 66 versus 89 because really, when the 89 movie came out, 66 was the last live action thing that we'd really seen. So the comparisons are very, very different. And, there's a huge difference between what we were getting in film and tone and music and overall presentation of what was there. And I liked it. I mean, I liked the distinction. To me, it was... I grew up loving Batman 66 because as a kid, I believed I didn't believe it was a spoof.
Yeah.
And during this time, they started re-airing the 66 show, too, which was cool because Batmania really swept around this time. We had Batman the Animated Series that came, sometime after this. It was a great time to be a Batman fan because there was this massive... Comics were at like an all-time high. We were getting some really high-quality comics. We got this film. We got an animated series that, to this day, holds up. It was a really cool time to be a fan of Batman. And people who were not traditionally, maybe would turn their nose up at comics, were now getting interested. Graphic novels were things that people were starting to look at, and there were certain stories. They're friends of mine to this day. Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke, things like that. People were reading during this time. Really, I'm talking about the span. It's a bubble of time where there were some stories that people were mass market reading, and it was such an amazing time to be a fan because our comic numbers were through the roof. I mean, comics were really selling well during this time. And, we still had a newsstand that you could go to. And direct market comic shops were really where you got the premium things. So it was a fun time. Were you doing any reading during, like, 89, you and I, we were kind of at, like, the early eras of our friendship. You and I knew each other. We were friends, but, like, we weren't close friends. Like, we hadn't, like, sat down and had, like, long conversations or anything like that during this time. So I don't know, were you reading any comics during this time, or was this kind of an era where, because I know in college you started reading more, but were you doing any kind of comic reading during this time?
Actually, Marvel. Okay. Marvel and X-Men.
Yeah, I was too. X-Men.
Yeah, this was my during this period is when I was reading some X.
It was a good era. It was a good era.
Like heavy, I wasn't even that heavy. It was more later reading. I think Wolverine had his solo series during this time. Yeah. So I was reading that, and I think I was reading, because they had Uncanny going on, and then they had the other X-Men title. So they had Uncanny X-Men and then just X-Men, right? I think
it was definitely there were less X books during this era. I'd have to go back and actually look at the placement as far as what X books were out at this time. But it was, to your point, there wasn't as many X books as we have now. Which isn't a fault of they just didn't have them. Well, I think the idea of expanding lines was fairly new. You didn't have, like, we're very used to now having lots of books with the same character. Lots. 4 or 5 books featuring the same characters or the same character universe is not uncommon now for the most popular ones. In '89. Batman, he had main titles, but we were getting a lot of mini-series with him, a lot of one-shots, a lot of hardcovers, soft covers, these Prestige Edition books. The difference when you got the Prestige, and you were getting things like Legends of Dark Knight, where it was high quality, great writing, great art, and it was stuff that was setting a different standard. So you're to your point, actually, what you're referencing is there was a lot more of a casual audience besides hardcore fans. So there were hardcore diehard fans. Then there were people that picked up a couple books, who were, wouldn't even consider themselves necessarily tried and true comic fans. And I know that's not a bad. I think one of the things I would love to see back in comics is a lot more of a casual fan, because I think through digital delivery and things like that, there's opportunities for that newsstand audience to come back, is more of what I'm referring to. And I feel it's something that we're missing, that we had a ton of in '89. You were competing with them when you went to the bookstore, because it really was. Every bookshop had comics. Remember, like Walden Books, things like that. Yes. You go in, there was a comic section. It was great. I like the use of Bullock in this.
Yeah. Well, Bullock and Gordon in this, because, my memory from the movie, both of them weren't painted in the best of lights, in this book. And they kind of really did improve how Gordon is, and kept Bullock as a piece of garbage, because he was corrupt in the '89 movie, big time. And they're still keeping him as corrupt here.
Bruce and Gordon did not have. This has to take place, I'm guessing, after Returns, or they're at least is, to your point. You mentioned this earlier. There's some significant time passage from the first movie, because you're right. Bruce's relationship with Jim Gordon, or Batman's relationship, I should say, with Jim Gordon, was not established like this in the first movie.
Right.
Because even the reaction of Gordon was the ground floor of getting to know Batman. Because when they were in the Ace Chemicals fight, he was like, oh my God, when he saw him. I mean, I remember that sequence vividly.
Yeah.
Where, like, Batman was this kind of enigma. So they did not have the kind of relationship where they'd be having the conversation that we get in this. So you get this idea of time passage so this either takes place after Returns, or the idea is that there's been a significant time. Because in Returns, their relationship is different. Their relationship is stronger. There's clearly a working relationship between the two. So this could easily take place before Returns and be an establishment of that. I don't know, but
my guess is this takes place after Returns. And the reason I'm throwing that out there is because in Returns, they use the signal regularly.
Oh, yeah.
And in this sequence, you're talking like when Gordon and Dent are on the rooftop, he's like, he's not coming. He's not stupid. We haven't used the signal in 6 months. So this is after they've stopped using the signal. So I think this takes place after it Returns.
Yeah.
So this is the third movie in the series, is kind of how I'm looking at it. But I don't know if they're even counting the second movie as canon.
I love when they do stuff like this where we've got the guy who's taking diapers and things like that because he's got to survive. And I'm not condoning that behavior. Don't get me wrong. But I always love these, Daredevil does this too sometimes, where you sit there and like, well, this isn't a criminal in the sense of the way I think of somebody who's got evil intent. This is somebody who's trying to survive. And I'm not justifying it, but you can sit there and go, I feel bad that he got to this point, that he doesn't have the know-how or the way to get to a different vehicle to survive other than this. And so there's a sympathy there where it's like, I can get why this has happened. I love those gray areas because there's something to that sequence where you're like, he's really just trying to take care of this baby, diapers and baby food. And what do you do in that moment? You're like, I'm Batman. Oh, sorry. And I loved that because I feel like that's so natural. I thought that was a great sequence that leads to then another vigilante coming in. And to some extent, it's like, could this be like some sort of Robin in this?
Dude, 100% this is going to be the Robin for this universe. Because look at the costume already. They've got the yellow inlined on the black cape, the hood. This is 100% going to be Robin. And I don't know who this person is or any of the details yet, but as soon as I saw that kick, like, oh yeah, this is Robin. This is going to be Robin. Cool. They're giving him a Robin. And I was excited for that. So I like that. And again, to your point, I thought, one, art scene. When he's first coming in, just the way they did the full shadow on him, that was awesome. That right there is a really cool scene.
Yep.
But going into it where he immediately recognizes, hey, this kid needs help. This is not a hardened criminal. This is somebody who needs, and he immediately calms down and he's like, "Where's your mother?" And he's going through the stuff to try to help. If he hadn't gotten his butt kicked by Robin, he would have actually probably reached in his pocket, pulled a little money, and given the kid some cash, and and done the right thing that way. 100% could see Bruce doing that. But again, everything is how it plays out. So I thought this was a great sequence. One, great introduction to Robin, but also even a really cool moment with him and the police and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a great sequence, leaving Batman like caught off guard and in a position where he's ready to be captured by military involvement here. Because they've got like what is this like?
Initially, I was thinking it was police, but you look at the uniform, that ain't police. That's National Guard.
Right.
And I think they called in the guard to take down the Bat. Because you go back to the sequence when the guy's giving his speech.
Oh wait, stay off the streets for a while. The National Guard has orders to bring you in alive or otherwise. Jim Gordon references this, so it is the National Guard.
Okay. So now he's got the National Guard coming after him.
Yeah. So, as a first issue, this was really well. I really enjoyed this. You know what I love about it It's so totally separate from everything else. Batman, I like this the way I like things like Curse of the White Knight. Like, embrace that this is a separate universe. Have fun with it. Take it places that you can't go to in the regular comics, but you can in this world. Embrace that 89 and Batman is its own continuity. Let's have some fun with this. I love when they do things like this. This is amazing.
Oh, big time. And again, you got to have the right people involved, and they do. Visually, it looks awesome. Story-wise is wonderful. So, yeah, we've got a solid home run on this one.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I want more of this. So I hope these like 6-issue minis do well and that we get another one. So let's go to a decidedly different flavor, Superman 78.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
Our next discussion is on Superman 78. Robert Venditti is the writer. Wilfredo Torres is the artist. Jordi Belair on colors. Dave Lamphere of A Larger World is the letterer, with a cover by Torres and Belair. Eben Doc Shaner has one of the variant covers, and Torres has the design variant. Editor is Andrew Marino, and of course, Superman was created by Cleveland's own Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by a special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family.
And I want to say, because I also call him Venditti, I don't know if that's the real pronunciation of his last name, and if so, I want to apologize, because this is a writer who I adore. I just feel like anytime his name is on something, I'm just going to dig it. I fell in love with his work in Valiant with Exo Man of War, then he became a name I would follow. And when he came over and started doing DC books, it was one more home run out of the park after another. This was great. I love, again, talk about a nostalgia fest. That's the important part about these two books. Here's the thing. If you didn't like those movies, or you didn't like that tone, or you're, maybe a younger, I don't want to say younger, but if you're somebody who just never really connected with either of these films, then you're probably not going to love these, because there's very much a tone that they're trying to capture here. For me, what I love about this is it absolutely embraces the tone of both of these movies, while at the same time feeling very modern, very current, very today. It really is like if Superman 78 continued and they made a new movie today with the same cast, being able to continue on this story. I looked up what that verisimilitude is when they were showing that Richard Donner. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that word correctly, but the idea that they were, it's really this idea that they were trying to craft this world that felt very real. And Superman 78 did. I remember at the time just being in awe of the fact that in 1978, the special effects that they put together for this movie, it was stunning. Like, yeah. I totally was, it was a long movie. I remember in 78 thinking, as a kid, it was like, it felt like it was never going to end, and I didn't want it to.
Yeah.
Because it was a really, really long movie. At that time, I remember in comparison to other things that I was seeing, it didn't feel like it was long. But you were there for like a depth-filled story where you got to really know these characters. The important part of this one is this is a world where there was slapstick, but the slapstick never took away again from the seriousness. And the slapstick a lot of times was to cover that Clark was Superman. Yeah. But it was something that was not far from this. They covered some serious topics, though, in the same time. And Superman was truly good. Except for Superman 3. Superman was truly good. And I really liked the idea of it being this hero. Superman was cool. I remember, even though he was, he wasn't like dark and gritty like Batman, in 78, this Superman, I loved these movies. Yeah. Like, every time there was a new one coming out, it was a rush to the theater to be able to see it. This was a welcome visit to something that has always been really important to me. And this film family, which, 4 maybe is one where I can I'll watch it again, but it's not quite to the same caliber as the other 3. But I loved Superman, the Richard Pryor movie. I really liked that. 1 and 2 are obviously like the pinnacle. right?
Yes.
But 3, I did like the fight between him and him in 3 that occurs. There were things that I liked about that movie, and 4 I liked just because there was a continuation of this universe. 3 and 4 were not the same quality as 1 and 2. Kind of the same we were talking about. There's actually some interesting parallels with the '89 Batman movie, and where that went to where this film series went as well. I would say the first 2 of that are kind of the pinnacle. First 2 of this are absolutely the pinnacle of what's going on. This decidedly is following the first 2 movies as far as where it's at, as far as quality, to me. We're really kind of embracing what worked in those first 2 films and bringing in this wicked cool Brainiac story.
Yes. I know, and that's one of the things, like, with this original movie, when I was a kid, I liked it for one reason, but as an adult, I still enjoy it. And one of the things I love, and I still just absolutely love, is portrayal of Clark Kent versus Superman.
Yep.
And the little extra stuff he used to do just to go out of his way to prove to people he's not Superman. It wasn't just a pair of glasses that covered up his, that hid his identity. It was how he carried himself, his persona, just you would never let that notion that Clark Kent and Superman were the same thing just because it's just Clark, and, well, golly gee willikers, well, Lois, and this and that, and I'm such a bumbling, and it was just so many different neat little things that he did. And I love those moments in the movies when he would drop it just for a split second. And you would still see, yep, that's Superman. Like in the comic, when the bad guy's running away after taking the purse, and he uses the heat vision to stop him. Just that one little panel when he drops his glasses down, has the look on his face. That's the Superman look. Yep. Christopher Reeves used to do that all the time. He'd go from being Clark Kent to Superman. And I love those moments. And they captured it in the comic, which I was very happy with.
Yeah, it was Grant Morrison did a good job with this in All-Star Superman, when that maxi series that they did.
Yes.
Because he really focused on the duality that you're talking about, and the art did a great job of emphasizing the slouch, and kind of the way that Clark hunched over and carried himself differently than Superman does, to mask it as well, that there's a physical transformation as well as a behavioral transformation. And that was something that I think was really an important piece. And I think it's reminiscent of what we liked about this. Christopher Reeve really did a terrific job in embracing and taking seriously getting to know Superman and really making that role work. Because you're right, the duality of that movie, I can watch that back endlessly. And I never get bored with the first 2 movies. And I'm talking about both versions of the first 2 movies, the Lester version and the Donner version of Superman 2. There's actually things I like about both. I will watch those periodically. I would love to go back in time and be able to see the Donner version like the way that it was meant to be. And I mean truly meant to be, where it was supposed to be one big film. It would have been nice to have seen what that was supposed to play out like. I know we got glimpses in it in the Donner cut of Superman 2, but it would have been nice to see it like all put together in one neat package. Christopher Reeve, though, embracing it. And Margot Kidder as Lois Lane was perfect, because you at times you would almost want to smack Clark and go, she is terrible to you. What are you drawn to? But then you see him as Superman, where he sees her conviction. He sees the fact that she really does care. That a lot of the things that she does with Clark are exterior, surface. The internal person is who Clark really gets to know, and we get to see that. Margot Kidder played a really great role as Lois Lane, where you see her being very self-driven and motivated, and a lot of times not catching things that are going on around her because she's so focused on the story or what she's trying to do next or thinking up the next thing. She's kind of oblivious sometimes to the fact that she's mean to Clark when I don't think she intends to be. I love that. And it all comes out in this, in that, like the hot dog sequence with the two of them. I thought was really great because she kind of does that, and yet you remember, okay, I get why the two of them, have the bond that they do, because he sees her at a different level. She ultimately winds up, when she knows the secret, she it was really a precursor to one of the things we love in the comics so much now. This idea that, what would these two be like if they really got together? I loved that in the movies. I loved that they explored it because I think this foundational relationship made it possible. So this whole thing just had a really great vibe and feel right away of that relationship. Like, I could see Margot Kidder delivering the lines in this. I could see Christopher Reeve delivering the lines in this. And I thought that was something that really stood out for me in this, was you could hear the voices. You know, you're one of the ones that say that. This one definitely felt like that.
Oh, big time.
I would have loved
to.
Yeah, I would have loved to seen this Brainiac. This Brainiac is awesome.
I know, man. And again, you know, just the concept that they're going with Brainiac grabbing Krypton before the planet, before the planet explodes. So he's grabbed the city they're in. So Krypton survives. This one city with Kryptonians survive. And we've seen that in comics. We've seen that with him doing that with Kandor and all that. So, that notion always is kind of neat, that there are possible Kryptonians out there. And it always opens up. There's so many different stories they can go with. What happens if a city, a Kryptonian city shows up on Earth? You have now, instead of just one guy who, is this wonderful kid who grew up on the Kansas farm and just, truth, justice in the American way and 100% yay, good man, isn't the only Kryptonian. And that's the thing they're setting the groundwork for on this one. We're going to get a great Brainiac story, but in the end, there's a city out there. There's a city of Kryptonians that survived. And who knows if Clark will be able to restore them. And if he does, what will happen next? Because we've seen a couple cool stories where Kryptonians land on Earth and they become all superpowered, and they're not 100% that good to the Earthlings because they see themselves as so far superior, not only technologically speaking, but physically now because of the yellow sun. So there's so many things they could do with this. And that's the one thing about, like with Batman 89, I started thinking off page what they can do for the next one. With this one, right out the gate, I started immediately thinking what the next story could be, what the next adventure could be in this universe. This universe itself, Earth 78, has a solid setup and can have some actual, some additional stories. And I think, one, it's just my past history with this, but two, this universe right here is set up. It's already established. They can go with, get the right people. You can do an awesome job. But they're not even, the neat thing about this creation is they're not solely focused on, we could do this, we can do that. They're intent to stay with like the if you think back to what the original theory of the movie was, it wasn't a Superman movie. It was about a guy who happens to be Superman, and the focus of that story was about Clark Kent, was about Clark Kent becoming Superman, was about what it is like to be a Superman, not just about Superman punching giant robots or big action sequences. This book is actually even sticking with that theory because you got Clark, dealing with Perry about what kind of writer he is. Talking even he had that initially open conversation with him and with Clark and Lois about, do you think Perry thinks I'm a good reporter? There's stuff about this about Perry, about Clark Kent and how a reporter is, what kind of story he wants to tell, what kind of person he wants to be. So I'm so happy that this comic didn't throw the concept out and make this. This isn't just a superhero movie, a superhero comic book. This is about comic book about a guy who happens to be a superhero, and I love that.
The nice part about this comic is it's able to do some things that would have been hard to do in the '78 movie, like the robot coming down and things like that. You could have done it. It's interesting. Well, my gosh, what they were doing with special effects in these movies back then. These wound up being big budget movies, which was, I think, part of the point of contention in these films, how much they cost. But I guess Donner originally had an idea for a Brainiac film. There was going to be Superman 3. This one, I guess, is supposed to take place, this story is supposed to take place before Superman 2, is my understanding. Okay. So he hasn't fought Zod yet.
Oh, okay.
Is my at least from what I've been reading up on this, that this is taking place beforehand. But I read an article with Donner where he talked about some ideas that he had, and one of them was Brainiac in Superman 3. They hadn't fleshed it out fully yet, and it was going to be a different kind of take on it, but he loved the idea of the intellect going up against Superman. And then there was actually a script that involved, it wasn't a Donner script, but there was a script that was penned that had Brainiac and Mxyzptlk. Dudley Moore was going to be Mxyzptlk, and Supergirl was going to be in it. The problem is, it was one of those where financially the script they were putting together was going to be like outside of the dollar range, so they had to scale it back. But wow, I mean, it's funny. I would have loved to see what that proportional dollar range was to some of the big budget blockbusters today, because it's not uncommon to see a very high ticket price superhero movie today, right?
Yeah.
I would be curious to see what the dollar amount, because that would have been the early 80s, I'm guessing, what the dollar amount of that Superman 3 script would have been in comparison to the dollar amounts we're seeing on scripts today, proportionately. You know, is that percentage close? Because, wow, we're seeing some high-ticket superhero movies.
Well, and like this Brainiac, this thing in present day would have been fine. They could have very easily have done this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but back in '78, this would have been tough. This would have been a tough story to do. Just they would have had to, the robot either would have been their version of the CGI, which doesn't look as clean, or it would have been a person in a Brainiac costume. And that's how they would have had to handle it.
Think about some of the sci-fi shows that you and I grew up watching, though. They did make that work.
Yeah.
I mean, well, here's the thing. This is also in the area of C-3PO, R2-D2.
Well, C-3PO was a man in a costume, and R2-D2 was partial robot, partial, Anthony Daniels in a costume. So
No, Kenny Baker.
Kenny Baker, sorry.
Yeah.
Anthony Daniels is C-3PO.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm saying that. What I'm saying is that's how it would have worked, and it would have looked good if the right dollar amount was put behind it. I wasn't disputing what you were saying as far as there wasn't like the CGI option at this time. What I was saying is it would have been like that, and I'm like, I'm more talking to myself as far as, would this have worked? Could they have done this in the early 80s? Yeah, if they put the right dollars toward it. Well, here's the problem. Yeah. If they put the right dollars towards it. Because for as many good ones as we saw some real junky ones too. Well, I guess let's look at the production values of Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, versus Superman the movie.
Yeah.
I have a soft spot for any of these four movies because of the fact that you could give me more Christopher Reeve as Superman and I'm going to dig it. But there's definitely a dip in the amount of financial dollars that they put behind these films. And it was really apparent in Superman 4 that it did not have the budget that the other movies did. And I think that would have been, if you did this story as a big budget film a la Superman the movie or Superman 2, it would have been one that we would still be talking about it to this day.
Yes.
But if you did it more with the budget dollars of Superman 4, I don't know that that's the case. Because we'd be ripping on the quality of the costume.
Yes.
And that would be the piece. I loved Otisburg on the wall. When Superman's going to run to change, I love that the graffiti had Otisburg.
Yeah.
By Schuster Station. I thought that was
Schuster
pretty
Station,
yeah, that was pretty cool.
I cheer for those. I cheer for those little moments.
The artist does a really good job of capturing his take on Christopher Reeve. Like, I feel like this Superman has a really strong look that's reminiscent of the Christopher Reeve Superman. Like when he does the change over in the costume, and I love that soundtrack. It's such a great soundtrack. This is one of those where I did read it in my second read through. I have the instrumental music from the movie. I did play that while I was reading it.
Awesome.
I gotta say, if you're listening to this and you have not done that, do yourself a favor and read this issue with the music playing in the background. Didn't do it with Batman 89. I really should have. I loved reading this with the soundtrack because the beauty of the soundtrack is there's no words to it. So you can really just have it on lightly in the background, really enjoy it. This reads really well with the soundtrack from the movie playing in the background. It really does.
Oh, cool.
So if you've got that, and nowadays I'm sure if you don't own the soundtrack, you can YouTube it and things like that. Do yourself a favor and listen because it's an amazing soundtrack and gives you it takes you into this world. It makes you feel like you're reading a movie.
Well, and just that opening, that scene when he first initially opens and he's flying.
Yep.
I love that flying right into the camera look, And again, that was just another one of those. I love those scenes. I love those moments, And it's and it's not even just a nostalgia to the movie. I always love these moments in Superman, any Superman story. When you have the open the shirt up and that's you see the S and then you see him flying. That's just a classic Superman moment, and I love seeing that. And again, like you, I wasn't playing the music. I was hearing it. I was singing it.
I urge you to actually play the music. I really urge everyone listening to actually do it because it's good. I like that in these sequences when there's action going on that Lois is taking out a role.
Yep.
She's doing things. She's getting involved. You don't just see her vanish all of a sudden. That was an important balance because that's reminiscent of the movies too, right? The amount of times that we got to see Lois and what she was doing and how she's trying to get the story. She gets herself into some mischief.
Yes. It's, the comment, good stories are never behind you.
Yep.
They're out front, and that right there, that's Lois Lane. That's the reporter. And I love seeing when they do stuff like that with her. And even earlier in the comic where Clark is kind of questioning Perry. Lois does put herself in a lot of danger, and he's asking that out of actual legit concern for her safety because she's like story first, safety second.
Superman's focus on getting the robot out of the way and checking on people. I really like that about this Superman. He's about saving lives and making that his immediate focus. To the point where he could be going in there to destroy the robot. It's a markedly different approach than the 89 Batman. Yes. And I like the distinction. That's not me ripping on the 89 Batman because I adore him in his own way because I'm a Batman guy. But this is my Superman. If you were to ask me, Sean, who is your Superman? It's Christopher Reeve. And this is the goodness of the Christopher Reeve Superman. To me, some of my favorite Superman stories are the ones where you can't possibly hope to be as good as Superman, but you should strive to be. Growing up in 78 and seeing this guy as a role model, and you're sitting there going, how can he be that good? The only way to turn him, bad is to, get him with some funky kryptonite. Because otherwise, he's just, naturally kind and naturally wants to help others. I really love this Superman because of that. You see the fight with Brainiac, and even in that fight, he never gets, this anger to him. It's cerebral. He's thinking through how to battle his opponent because he's focused on saving lives. What can he do to save lives? What can he do to stop the threat? And I just love that different focus with him. I think it's a unique quality to Superman, and I think a well-written Superman is able to capture that. I think now more than ever today, it's relevant. I felt this story was relevant now.
Big time. And again, it does fit who Superman always is. This is, again, protect the innocent. That has always been Superman's true greatest weakness that he has, not kryptonite. It's the innocent lives in the area. He's got to make sure they're safe. So he takes on the robot, checks on, make sure everybody needs any help, and then, I got to finish up the robot. It was a really neat sequence playing throughout this. And even, just the moments he gets knocked down, he's not completely knocked out. That I love this, that couple 1-2 combo punch knocks the head of the robot off. And again, I don't have a problem with him knocking the head off the robot because he knows that's a robot. He knows that's not a person. One, because he's Superman. Two, he probably did check it out, make sure, that everything's okay. I can use full strength on this guy.
The Brainiac part is really interesting here because Brainiac's looking at this this is his petri dish, right? Earth. And there's this interspecies balance that now is being threatened by the fact that this Kryptonian exists. And I love that this robot alone is a threat that Superman's fighting. He hasn't even fought the big bad yet,
Yes.
Brainiac. It's interesting how his agents, and this really does embrace the best of comics with Brainiac and bring it into the Superman 78 world. It really does add this really serious threat. I love that at the end of this, we're going to get next issue, Lex Luthor.
Yes.
Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor was a character that I really loved. We didn't even get him in this issue. I'm so excited to see him in next. I want to see in Venditti, I trust, and I hope I'm not butchering his last name, because this writer just really is nailing this. This feels very much like a great movie from this era. And these are important. I love when DC embraces its past. A lot of times we talk about the quality of, and I love, I just saw Shang-Chi. I love the Marvel films. I mean, there's a Shang-Chi movie out there that is amazing. And wait, I want to say this again. There's a Shang-Chi movie out there that's amazing. It's a great, great movie. And I love that Marvel has gotten to the point where they found, I hope it's doing well. I didn't look at the numbers for it. With the pandemic, I think it's really, really hard to know what is considered doing well right now with rising Delta variants and all that kind of junk. But it's a great movie. When I look back at this, a lot of times we don't give DC filmmakers, I should say, who've licensed out DC properties enough credit for some of the amazing DC. I mean, Superman in particular has enjoyed movie serials historically that were really strong. Batman enjoyed serials that were really strong. I'm talking about for their era, right? That led to a black and white TV series with Superman that became colorized eventually that was really terrific. Into these movies, which were amazing. There's been a lot of great DC movies and DC TV shows historically that have been out there that we often forget about when we're having the conversation about the quality of what's out there. I love the MCU. I love the fact that it's bleeding over into Disney Plus, and we're getting. But if you saw Shang-Chi, I know this is a DC podcast, but there is this really cool. If you've got Disney Plus, there's this cool little thing, a little solo teaser with Ben Kingsley that's on there, and it's a story. It's actually like this 15-minute short that is a prelude of sorts to Shang-Chi. So if you've got Disney Plus, go and watch that, because I watched it last night and it was really, really awesome. But I'm enjoying all of the comic book content that's out there right now. This, I would love to see. They did those Batman 66 directed animation films. They did the one with William Shatner as Two-Face that was after Adam West had passed. I would love to see another one of those. I would love to see one of these. I would love them to do a Superman 78 animated feature. Really embracing the style of Superman 78. I don't know that we'll ever get that, but boy, this story sure serves as a template, doesn't it?
Oh, big time. Big time, man. And as you're going, I'm nodding my head saying, yes, please, I want that.
Yeah. So it's stuff like this that's really great. I love that DC's embracing this, though. It's funny how, we were talking, a year ago at this time, all gloom and doom, about, what's going to be the fate of DC. And I get why, and I think to a certain extent we should, comics in general, we as fans, need to be supportive of comics, because it's at a time where we're not getting the numbers that they should be. I really believe that. And we need to do what we can to help get the word out about great quality comics, so that way new readers are starting to come and try out comics casually, like we talked about earlier. Some of your early days as a comic reader were casual. You had a few titles that you were picking up, and that was it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think we need a casual audience. I would love to see that recreated again, so that way we get more of this kind of stuff. Because that's where this comes from, right? It's the fact that there has to be a readership that is going to be picking this up. It has to make money. We don't like to talk about that when it comes to comics, but it has to make money in order for it to go on. So why do we keep getting different types of Batman and Superman delivery, for example? Because of the fact that they sell. And when they're good like this, top quality like this, of course they're going to continue selling. If you want more comics, you want more variety, we need more readers. And it's up to us to be the advocates for why comics are great. Don't spend a whole lot of... I really do mean this. Don't spend a whole lot of time complaining about the stuff that you don't like. Embrace the stuff that you do, that you genuinely do. and get the word out so that way people come and we get more of this kind of. This was great. I really liked this week's content. Was fun. It was fun to nostalgia look back at these books. I'm excited to continue following these for all 6 issues. I really like that these are 6-issue miniseries and not ongoings. I know that's strange to say, but I'm hoping that, like, similar to the approach they're taking with Milestone, there's an implication that there can be a season 2 of both of these. Because I do want more, but I like the idea of them doing them as like these contained film-like stories. Are you in that? Like, what would you prefer? Would you prefer this to be an ongoing, or would you prefer it to be miniseries deliveries? I don't know that's my opinion. My opinion is I like this as long as there's more. Like we get miniseries after miniseries after miniseries that are this quality.
I'm actually in the mindset of I would rather miniseries after miniseries after miniseries. And the reason I'm thinking that is I think if it's a series of miniseries, we'll get... Because sometimes if you're doing an ongoing, sometimes you can have a moment where things start lagging or, you know, you're running out of ideas. If you've got a miniseries after miniseries, you're always going to have that set idea, and it's always going to be the advancement of the story. You know, it's kind of like, you know, the White Knight series that's coming out, you know, that's been, you know, going on. That's a set of series of mini stories after miniseries after miniseries. And I think that's partially why I'm enjoying it so much is we've got this story, then we've got I think, I don't know. For me, if it's not in the continuity, I think the story and sales and whatnot are better if they do a series. But I don't want them to stop these things. I want the story, this universe to continue. Both universes are solid, and I want more of this. And that's why I hope these things do so well that they say, we need more of these.
By the way, I started reading Hardware, the old issues of Hardware on DC Infinite. It's really good. We talked last episode about Hardware Season 1, Issue 1, and I was talking about how much I was really into it. There's 19 issues of this right now available from 1993 to 1997 on DC Infinite, and it's really, really cool. So I'm only 2 issues in, but the first 2 issues are just amazing. Hardware is just a great, great book. So if you're out there and you didn't read the original Milestone, which I didn't, Hardware is one I highly recommend. I'm 2 issues in, and I'm going to continue reading it. But this is where I haven't been doing this a lot on DC Infinite, and I am starting to now delve into some things that I haven't read before that are available on it. I'm finding a lot of value in that. I'm trying to do that just because I'm reading so many titles. And I bought this DC Infinite, and I'm like, well, I keep buying everything, right? So I've got to, at some point in time, figure out, like, why am I going to keep renewing this? And I'm finding my reason. It's really stuff like this where I was able to jump on and go, oh, wow. And I've started adding, like, some classic comics where maybe I have it in singles or, my floppies that are in there, or I have omnibuses and things like that where I'm now putting them into little categories of, I'd like to read that, but I want to read it digitally. So I'm using DC Infinite for that. But Hardware right now is my current jam on DC Infinite. And I think I'm going to make it through all the issues of this and keep reading it because first 2 issues in, I just want to read more. And it looks like it goes from issue 1 to issue 19. And I don't know if 19 was the last issue or not, but I'm definitely excited to read more. And it's so Dwayne McDuffie did the writing on that. Dennis Cohen did the pencils on that, which we know from the current series. And Jimmy Palmiotti was the inks. So this is a very, very cool era back from 1993. And I'm sad that I missed this back in those days. My budget wouldn't have allowed myself to be able to pick this up. And I missed a really, really great series. So if you're looking for something to read on DC Infinite, I'm going to try to do this a little bit more on the show. Every so often spotlight something that I'm reading on DC Infinite that I wouldn't have read otherwise. And Hardware right now is it. I'm going to go through and my goal is to read all of Hardware on the app and really embrace it. and see what it's like. I'm digging it. This is going to lead me to buy it. I know it is, because I like I do like the ownership, the sense of ownership. I don't know what that means, like when you buy it on Comixology, and there's that part of me that I love omnibuses because of that. I've got then my archived paper copy that you can't take from me. You have to burn down my house. There's that part of me that needs that for so many books. I think that's why more now my focus in collecting is absolute editions and omnibuses, or these collected editions that are out there. DC does these cool deluxe hardcovers too, that are really like well put together. Particularly Vertigo titles, like the deluxe Fables books are gorgeous. I'm enjoying grabbing those. But do you worry about that with digital at all? Is that just a me thing? Like that? What happens if like Comixology is owned by Amazon? So am I afraid of Comixology really shutting down? No, but I'm still like, I had to face this with my PlayStation recently because Sony made this like crazy announcement that like PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita titles were soon no longer going to be available. And what it meant was my digital library, the stuff I already paid for, was not going to be available to me. Well, there was backlash, and they pulled back on that. I can still download my stuff. But like I dusted off my PlayStation 3, and I'm like downloading mass quantities of my games. I bought like a larger hard drive for it because I think it only like the largest it'll go is a terabyte. And I'm downloading that stuff because I'm like, well, if they pull this now, you know it's going to happen again, right? Eventually they're going to phase this out because they're going to be far enough away that they feel like there's not going to be backlash anymore. And I get it. How long are you going to pay for archive storage for these games that you can't access on the PlayStation 4 or the PlayStation 5? So back to comics on this. Do you worry about that with digital? Because I like having an archive of my stuff. Do you worry about not stuff that you're buying digitally that you aren't buying in print is not going to be available to you? Because I know you, like me, are buying certain things in print and certain things in digital. There's things where you're buying it in overlap. How do you feel about the stuff that you're not buying in overlap?
I'm not really too worried about it, to be honest with you. Every so often I do think about how I would like to have more paper copies, more physical paper, more actual books. And there's certain titles that I'm like, I'd be neat to have if I just started going back and getting all of them and just, really build out the collection physically. But usually it ends in in thinking about it, and I don't actually do it because I've got physical limitations on what space I have available, and that right there is stopping me big time from going full on. Part of the reason I do like digital is in iZilla, and in my computer, I have all of this stuff, and it's easier for me to see it. Now, I don't physically own it, so as you said, Comixology goes down, I lose everything, and that will really stink because I've got a lot of the indie stuff, non-DC, non-Marvel. So I can't even say indie because some of them are larger companies, but it's still it's stuff that I would think would be harder for me to find the actual paper copy of these things. Sure. So if I lost access to this, if it went away completely, I would be majorly in trouble. Because I'd be like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. Because the Marvel books, Marvel and DC books, I'll be able to physically find probably, but some of this other stuff out there that I'm reading, I wouldn't even know where to begin to look for the physical copies of it. So in a way, part of me worries about it, but in a way I don't. I think if something happens to it, then you just improvise, adapt, and overcome. You just move on. So it's every so often I get that tinge of fear, but I'm going to just say it's a stable enough company. I'll be fine.
It's funny. My shopping at DCBS and all that, I was looking at just kind of year over year, my spending, and my spending's about the same as it's always been. It's different now though. I do focus a lot more on collected editions, hardcovers, omnibuses. Omnibuses in particular are focus. And absolute editions. I love the absolute editions. I think they're just the quality, the paper quality, the oversized book, the actual hardcover itself that is usually themed to especially like the Sandman ones, which are very themed to Sandman. I think just the quality is amazing. So I love those. So there's a focus on that. There's stuff like I have the Starman Omnibus Collection, which was a series of smaller hardcovers, but it covered everything, like anything that James Robinson did, from like showcase short stories, because they had a series called Showcase that was an anthology. There were short stories in there that were part of this Starman universe. Those are all in there. So it really is all encompassing. The Shade miniseries is in there. They're collecting it now in a trade. They're doing this compendium. It's called Starman Compendium that's being released. I believe I have the right name for it. Volume 1 in trade. It's larger. These are larger trades. I'm strangely tempted to start grabbing those just because I love that story so much that it's weird that I would rebuy it in another format, but I would because it's that good. How do you decide what to buy in paper now and what to buy digitally? Because you and I are kind of in the same boat. I know we're both buying, because I like buying a lot of swag now too. Like I'll buy statues and related swag and things like that. You referenced it actually in the ad last time around, and it's funny. Our ads, when we do them, you and I both do this. We pick out things that we're genuinely interested in. Our ads are very genuine when we do them. And fortunately, DCBS at InStockTrades.com have always been very supportive in just letting us do our own ads for their sites, which I think it serves to be genuine because I genuinely grab stuff that I'm interested in and I want to point people to. So when you were referencing swag and all the related things like that, I'm like, every order now has swag in it of some sort. And to your point, swag, not just comic related, but they have video game related swag. They have science fiction related swag. You can find stuff for Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, any kind of your video game related stuff and things like that are all available from DCB Service when you do your orders. That stuff is a bigger part of my order now than it ever has been, along with collected editions. What about you, though, paper-wise? How do you choose paper when you go paper and when you go digital? What makes you buy paper nowadays? What are the things that... I know you and I are both buying a lot of paper.
Well, a lot of the paper is... I've got the set collection. It's the collection mindset. There are certain titles that I want the physical paper, even though I'm double dipping. I'm buying the paper and I'm buying digital. So I have the digital up front while we're, talking the show, but I have everything in paper as well. And part of that is just, again, as I said, it's the tradition, my tradition collection. Superman, Batman, Action Comics, Detective Comics, Wonder Woman. 100%, those will always be a physical paper. I've added the new Robin series is digital and paper just because that's Robin, and sometimes some of these specials that come out, I'll get the original paper, and then I'll get the digital as well. So it's an eyeballing what I am, it's got to be that either that the full-on collection, or it's got to be the, that special something that catches my eye.
Sure.
The everyday titles like, Justice League, the different Green books. I'm drawing blanks on any other. Those are just pure digital. And when you get some of the stories that are really cool, and I'm like, man, I want to physically own that, that's when I look at in the collected side. Usually I'll wait to see if it's going to come out absolute. Maybe if it's coming out in a hardcover, maybe they're going to do something. It'll be included in some type of box set or whatnot. And that's how I go on those physical sides.
We aren't far off in what we're doing because it really is. We're still double buying.
Oh yeah.
Which I'm laughing at because as you're going through it, I'm like saying, yeah. It's funny. You were referencing before buying paper and buying. Like, I was buying paper before for my single floppy issues, and then I was buying collected editions for the rereadability. Because I'm like, well, they're bagged and board, and I want to protect them. So now I want the hardcover for the... It really is true. I like rereading stories, my favorite storylines. So I was buying hardcovers for that reason. Now it's funny, I'm almost buying the hardcovers for the reasons I was buying singles before, to have the backup, I own it. I've got the physical version of it. and my digital is my reread copy in some cases. But then there's, to your point, there's certain series where they are my collection. I've got to have the singles to continue that run, and that run's really important to me. So it is a weird high, like it. I love that now comic fans in general can very much personalize how they collect and what that looks like, and it could be very different between any two fans. I'm sure if you and I kept going and we really were listing things, we'd start to see some variations in what we're doing that are unique to us and unique to our personal collecting preferences, to the point where our collections are very unique and personal. And I love that. I think I think this part, we talk about some of the negatives that are out there now. I think the flexibility of being able to combine paper and digital and the amount of swag that we have available to us, we are in kind of a golden age with that. We have a lot of flexibility on not only enjoying the hobby itself, but all of the add-ons that go along with it, because there's stuff available that I never thought was going to be available. And it's really neat.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. That's always available in our show notes. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our show email address. You prefer to contact us that way. RagingBullets.com is our show website, which is a central hub. You can find out all kinds of information about us in the About Us section, how to link to us as far as on social media, on gaming platforms. We love connecting with you. That does feed to Twitter and to Facebook. It also leads to our Facebook group community. And we are proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community that goes so far beyond our podcast. We're really proud to be associated with it. I go there to see all of my news about pop culture, comics, blogs, and reactions. The reactions from the crew that's there are just so great. I'm constantly finding new things that I would have missed, and I appreciate the sharing that goes on there. If you've got a podcast or a blog or something you're connected with and you want to shout it out, please feel free to use that as well. I'm a big fan of cross-promotion. Our podcast has enjoyed that throughout our over 15 years, where people have been kind enough to shout us out. Please know that I consider us to be a larger community and proud to be a part of a larger community. So feel free to call in, shout out your podcast. Feel free to do it up on our Facebook group community. Same thing with blogs, anything that you're connected with. It's a lot of times for me, it lets me know that these things exist, and I want to know. So please feel free to do that as well. We are sponsored as always by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
We have a Batman box set which has Long Halloween, Batman Ego and Other Tales, Batman Year One, 50% off, only $31.50. But we also have the Fables 20th Anniversary box set, which collects the full Fables section, full Fables saga. It's 50% off, only $120. Thank you, DCBS.
I'm probably going to get that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be getting that as well. I've been eyeballing that, going, I think it's time to order that.
Yeah, I'm like sitting here, will I rebuy Fables for that? I probably will, because I love Fables is one of my favorite of all time. I'm probably going to get that because it's. I think that's cool to have it collected that way. It's going to look really nice too, like on a shelf.
Yeah, it's in 4 volumes, all in one nice box, and actually the images of it on DCS looks really cool.
Yeah,
and I'm looking at my shelves right now. I'm like, I think I have all of this already. I'm like, and that's the thing. I'm like, but this looks so cool.
But but here's the thing: you don't have it like that.
I know, exactly. That's where I'm like, and it's 50% off. I'm like, hey, it's
it's like they're giving it to us.
Exactly. Well, hey, here's what we can do, Sean. You buy 2, give 1 to me, and then we'll both be happy.
You know what? I see how that would make us both happy. Yeah, the sad part is I'd probably fall for that. Over at InStockTrades.com, I mentioned it earlier, and I really do. I'm using this more and more now. Their wish list section. You go to the coming soon section. There's the ability to take a look at all the various collected editions that are coming out and to make your own personalized wish list so you don't miss something that you're really looking for. And it's always great because InStockTrades.com gives you these books at a discount. So it's great to budget this out. Because sometimes there's months where like there's just a plethora of things being released, and it's like I can't buy all of them in that month, but I don't want to miss them either. It gives you a chance to kind of budget things out, and I love it, and I recommend it to people. So it's InStockTrades.com. Click the Coming Soon button and start making your own wish list, because I think it's just a super cool idea and something that's really helpful, because we're all out of budget. I mean, I don't have unlimited money for this, and I just found out I'm going to be buying a Fables collection that I didn't know that I was going to buy. So, it really does, joking aside, I can't buy all of these things in the same month. So I do have to pace some of this out, and these wish lists and things like that do allow me to do that. So thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, we're going to be talking about Titans United and Justice League 67. We will see you then.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think
Sean,
Jim,
Jim, how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's our